Hey folks, Robin Robbins here, founder of TMT and MSP Success Magazine. I'm here with Gerard Moore, who is CEO of Phoenix Technologies, and we are here to talk about an area of security and protection for your clients that I can practically guarantee that you're not thinking about, that you're not protecting your clients about. And I know you've heard that from a million vendors, like, oh, you know, there's another cybersecurity protection that you need. But I really do think this time is one that you are not thinking about this and not protecting your clients about. And because of that, it is now the new gateway, the new backdoor, the new way hackers are now getting into your clients' networks. And you're going to start seeing more of this when it comes to compliance, obviously in security. So, Gerard, very excited to have you here and talk about this.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Yeah, so it's kind of exciting. You were saying you're a 40-year startup, so I guess, talk to us a little bit about Phoenix Technologies and what you do.
Yeah, Phoenix is around quite a while. We do the firmware for all the Lenovo laptops, ThinkPads, LG laptops, VAIO laptops. We work with the silicon makers, Intel, AMD, ARM, in terms of developing secure, robust, and efficient firmware. But obviously secure is key, and the most secure firmware is UFI, which is the open source standard for firmware. We're a co-founder of the UFI forum. We're on the UFI board. We chair the UFI security response team. So we feel we're pretty experts in firmware and firmware security. And FirmGuard, which is the product we're talking about, is focused on MSPs, their use cases, to give them a tool not only to provide security, but also efficiency and compliance.
Okay, so it's a remote tool to go in and fix firmware on their client's device. I mean, that's essentially one component of it. Not
correct. No, that's correct.
Yeah.
So it is completely remote. You can access your customers' endpoints. You can check the security level of the firmware, that it's intact, monitor that firmware, and then use FirmGuard to manage those endpoints in terms of erasing disks to a secure level and changing the firmware settings of the endpoint, all remotely.
Okay, so when we're talking to the MSPs out here that are watching you, and they hear security, they hear compliance, why do MSPs need this product?
So I've been on one call with somebody who had hundreds of thousands of endpoints, and they joked of the fact that they focus on application security, they focus on operating system security, and they kind of look at the firmware security through fingers like this, because that's not something that there's a great deal of awareness of. So really, it is a real threat. It's an attack surface. And that's why we produced FirmGuard, because it allows you to monitor and track what your firmware is doing. But it's got other benefits as well.
Okay, so from a security standpoint, are attacks happening on that level? Attacks
are happening, and in fact, the best source for that is the fact that CISA, the Federal Cybersecurity Agency, last year issued a bulletin basically warning about the risk to firmware from attacks, that they're increasing in prevalence, they're dangerous. If you get control of the firmware, you have control of the entire device, operating system, the hard disks, and you're below the operating system, so they persist. So even if you reboot the machine or even reinstall the operating system, the firmware malware is still there.
So, but aren't other security tools protecting that device from that attack, or is they're getting through in some way?
I mean, one of the best protections is to just keep your firmware up to date. So part of one of the features of FirmGuard is secure update, to make sure that your firmware is up to date. And making sure that you've got the endpoints are running in the correct and most secure mode. So FirmGuard does provide that. Whether it's unique or not, I think we believe it is unique, in not only in that aspect, but also in the tools like Secure Wipe, where, as I mentioned, you can securely erase a hard disk to a military standard.
Okay, so it's just another layer then, again, I think everybody, I have not heard of anybody talking about firmware security in any, we get a lot of vendors, we have hundreds of vendors come to our events. I haven't heard anyone talking about this, so that it is unique, I think.
Yeah, no, and the issue is that firmware is a harder layer to hack. The operating system, the applications in some ways they're easier, and which is why CISA gave that warning that firmware is a critical attack surface, and it is being increasingly used. But you are correct. 5 years ago, this probably wasn't as much of an issue or a concern as it is now.
As it's becoming now.
And that's the timeliness of us introducing FirmGuard.
Okay, so because I know when I asked you, like, why do MSPs need this, you mentioned security, which we're talking about now, compliance, which you kind of touched on a little bit. So talk about that a little bit, because I believe, like, if companies have to be HIPAA compliant, they have to shred the hard disk if they're like getting rid of a machine or deploying it to something else. So I think, is this a tool that people are now using? FirmGuard, are they using that now to become HIPAA compliant with the devices that they're trying to?
Yeah, yes. In order to, for example, confidential patient data, you would normally dispose of that in a physical way by crushing the device or securely erasing the disk. But it was something you had to do on site. You had to go collect the device. With FirmGuard, you can actually do that remotely. And it'll even print a certificate of erasure for compliance purposes. And because we're operating at a firmware level, the disk is completely erased from the operating system, including the operating system. So from a compliance perspective, that's a big benefit. If you had a bad lever, for example, and you were concerned about information on the endpoint, you can erase that endpoint totally before the endpoint is shipped back to you, or if you don't see it again. So those are ways where you can, from a compliance perspective, you can benefit from it and charge for it as an MSP.
Okay, so there's the security part of it, there's that compliance piece about wiping devices, there's the convenience part of it. I know one of our mutual clients, I won't say his name because I don't know if we're, like privacy, security, I don't know what we're supposed to say, but had a firmware problem and was able to just remote in and fix it, where normally you would have to go on site.
Yeah, no,
right?
we put this out on a testimonial. We had one client who had based actually in the West Coast. They had 2 laptops in Hong Kong. They needed to make some changes to run Windows 11. They needed firmware changes. Clearly, they're not going to get on site in Hong Kong. They were going to, with a 15-hour time difference, going to have to get somebody to walk them through the steps. With FirmGuard, they fixed the problem in 15 minutes.
Okay.
Because they could use our configuration utility to change the firmware settings, reboot into Windows 11, and the problem was resolved in 15 minutes.
Okay.
So it was a huge efficiency benefit for them.
Right. Okay, sounds good. All right, so it sounds like security, compliance, efficiency, awareness, all these things that this is, I think we're going to start hearing more about this. I think as, whether it's HIPAA compliance or CMMC, having that, those devices secure from the bottom up, is super, super important. So I think you have a scan or something, or an offer, so that if people want to learn more and talk about that.
So what we have is you just go to firmguard.com/TMT. It's a free audit for all of your inventory. There's no strings attached, no cost, but it will tell you if, for example, some endpoints are in legacy mode, which is a major security vulnerability. If you've got secure boot enabled, if you've got BitLocker enabled. And we have found with people who have done these audits that maybe up to 10% of their inventory, to their surprise, was in legacy mode, which is not secure. So as I said, it's free, it's no strings attached, firmguard.com/TMT. And just sign up. Yeah,
and because you had mentioned, so not only is that, but there's other it'll tell them if it's in like a reboot, secure boot has been turned off.
Secure boot, BitLocker, any of those things you can check using that scan.
Okay, so they go there. Is this a tool they download and run on their clients, or how does it? So they go and download, or are they signing up for a demo there?
It's all cloud-based. They're signing up for the audit. It's free of charge. As I said, no strings, and the team will take them through it all and install it, and then they can see for themselves the benefits.
So they can see if take their clients and look at the firmware and see if there's any vulnerabilities there.
And then the tool will let them fix many of those vulnerabilities as well.
Well, they have to pay for that part, right?
No, that's part of the audit. They can do that. If they want to use it to fix them, they can do that as well.
Okay, excellent.
We're confident they'll like it.
And want to keep it.
And want to keep it.
Okay, excellent. Yeah. All right, well, that sounds like a pretty good offer, guys. So again, go give the URL one more time.
firmguard.com/TMT. overlook.com/TMT.
So go there and check it out and sign up. I'll make sure my MSP does that on us. So he'll definitely find something wrong with mine for sure. I'm sure my firmware is all messed up. So, anyway, okay, great seeing you guys. Thanks for being here so much.
Thanks very much. Thanks, Robin.